I was 29 years old when this happened, and it took place on Christmas Eve while I was traveling alone for work. I worked in sales at the time, and my job required frequent overnight trips, especially at the end of the year. I'd stayed in dozens of hotels by then, so being alone in one didn't feel unusual. That night was supposed to be simple. Drive in, check in, sleep, leave early the next morning. The hotel was a mid-range business hotel just off the highway in a quiet Midwestern town. Nothing fancy, nothing sketchy. At least that's what I thought. I arrived around 8:30 p.m. Snow hadn't fallen yet, but the air was bitterly cold and the parking lot was nearly empty. Inside the lobby was warm and quiet, decorated with a small Christmas tree and a few strands of lights behind the front desk. The clerk checked me in without much conversation. He handed me my key card and said 4th floor, room 417. I nodded, thanked him, and headed for the elevator. As the doors closed, I noticed I was alone in the elevator. I remember that detail clearly because it felt oddly peaceful. My room was at the end of a long hallway. I unlocked the door, flipped on the lights, and did my usual routine. Checked the bathroom, the closet, and the space under the bed. Everything looked normal. I locked the door behind me and set my bag down. The room was quiet, almost too quiet. I ordered takeout from a place down the street and sat on the bed, scrolling through my phone while I waited. Around 9:15, there was a knock at my door. I assumed it was the food delivery. I looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. No card. No person. I waited a few seconds, then opened the door. Nothing. The hallway stretched out in both directions, silent and still. I shrugged it off, figuring the knock had been from another room or maybe someone walking past. 5 minutes later, my food arrived for real. I ate, showered, and changed into pajamas, planning to sleep early. Around 10:30, as I was lying in bed watching TV, my phone buzzed with a notification. It was a text from an unknown number. The message read, "You left your light on." My stomach tightened. I sat up and looked around the room. The bathroom light was on. I had left it on. I typed back, "Who is this?" The response came almost immediately. "Just letting you know." I stared at the screen, my heart starting to beat faster. I checked the door. Still locked. The chain was on. I tried to convince myself it was a wrong number. Then another text came in. "Room 417 gets cold at night." I froze. I hadn't told anyone my room number. I hadn't posted anything online. I hadn't even mentioned it to my coworkers. I grabbed my phone and called the front desk. The clerk answered sleepily. I asked if anyone had requested access to my room or if maintenance had been on my floor. He said no. I asked if anyone else had checked in on the 4th floor recently. He hesitated, then said he couldn't share that information. He suggested I lock my door and call back if anything else happened. I hung up, feeling unsettled but not panicked yet. Hotels are public places, I told myself. Anyone could guess a room number. Around 1110, I heard footsteps outside my door. Slow footsteps. They stopped directly in front of my room. I held my breath. A shadow passed under the door. Then the handle moved, just slightly, like someone testing it. The chain rattled softly. I didn't move. I didn't make a sound. After a long moment, the footsteps walked away. I waited, counting my breaths, listening to the hum of the heater. My phone buzzed again. "You should use the deadbolt too." My hands were shaking so badly, I nearly dropped the phone. I checked the lock again. The deadbolt was already engaged. Whoever was texting me knew I was inside. They knew I was alone, and they had been standing right outside my door. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the bed with the TV on low, staring at the door until the sky outside the window began to lighten. When morning finally came, I packed my things quickly and left without checking out properly. I told myself I was overreacting. I told myself nothing actually happened. But as I reached my car in the parking lot, I noticed something tucked under my windshield wiper. A folded receipt. From the hotel bar downstairs. Time-stamped 10:58 p.m. Written across the back in pen were 4 words that made my chest tighten. I knocked first. I stood in the parking lot, staring at the receipt until my fingers went numb. The ink was slightly smeared, as if whoever wrote it had pressed too hard. I knocked first. I looked up at the hotel at the dark windows stacked in neat rows. My room was one of them. I folded the receipt, slid it into my pocket, and drove away without looking back. I told myself the distance would make it feel smaller. It didn't. I made it 2 miles down the road before I pulled over, hands shaking, and called my manager to explain that I wouldn't be staying another night. I didn't explain why. I didn't know how. I drove straight home, replaying every moment in my head, the knock, the texts, the handle moving. By the time I reached my apartment, it was daylight and the world looked normal again. Too normal. I didn't sleep for almost 24 hours. That night I convinced myself it was over. A creep. A coincidence. Someone who worked at the hotel bar, maybe, who overheard the clerk say my room number. That explanation almost worked. Almost. 3 days later, I had another trip scheduled. Different state, different hotel chain. I considered canceling. I didn't. I didn't want fear to decide my life. I arrived at the new hotel just after 9 p.m. The lobby was busier than the last one, families checking in, a group of people laughing near the elevator. I felt safer immediately. The clerk handed me my key. 5th floor, room 512. I didn't repeat the number out loud this time. I went straight to my room, locked the door, and turned on every light. I ordered room service and kept the TV on loud enough to drown out hallway noise. At 1017, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. The message read, "Different room." My stomach dropped. I didn't respond. I blocked the number. I told myself it was spam. Then another message came through from a different number. Same floor. My hands started to shake. I called the front desk immediately. I told them someone was texting me about my room. They said no one had access to guest phone numbers. They offered to move me to another room. I said yes. I packed my bag in under 5 minutes. A staff member walked me to a room on the 3rd floor, near the elevators. I felt ridiculous, but also relieved. I locked the door, double-checked the chain, and sat on the bed, breathing hard. The phone stayed silent. Midnight passed. I started to relax. At 1242, there was a knock. I froze. I didn't answer. Another knock followed, firmer this time. Front desk. A man's voice said through the door. Calm, professional. My heart pounded. I asked him to slide his badge under the door. Silence. Then, quietly, "Ma'am, there's an issue with your account." I stayed silent. The handle moved slightly. The chain rattled. The voice dropped. "You didn't have the chain last time," I screamed. I grabbed the phone and called 911, yelling my location. The knocking stopped instantly. The footsteps retreated fast, this time running. Security arrived first, then the police. They searched the hallway, the stairwells, the parking lot. They found nothing. No one matching the description. No reports from other guests. The officers asked if I knew anyone who might be following me. I said no. I didn't believe it myself. They advised me to stay with a friend and offered to escort me to my car. I checked out that night. I didn't travel alone for months after that. When I finally did, I avoided hotels entirely, choosing short-term rentals or staying with coworkers. I changed my number. I deleted my social media. I tried to forget. It almost worked. Last Christmas Eve, I had to travel again for work. One night only. I picked a large hotel downtown, busy, well-lit, with security at every entrance. I told myself I was being paranoid. At check-in, the clerk smiled and handed me my key. 4th floor, she said. Room 417. My heart skipped. I laughed nervously and asked to be moved. She apologized and changed it. Room 431. I nodded, forcing a smile. That night, I locked the door, turned on the TV, and sat on the bed, scrolling through my phone. At exactly 10:58 p.m., my phone buzzed. A new message. Unknown number. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. There were no words. Just a photo. It was a picture of a hotel hallway. My hallway. Taken from the end of it, angled toward my door. The room number was visible. 431. Beneath the image, a single line of text appeared. I knock first. I didn't scream this time. I didn't cry. I packed my bag quietly, unlocked the door, and walked straight to the elevator. As the doors closed, I saw someone step out of the stairwell at the far end of the hall. A man. He didn't rush toward me. He didn't wave. He just stood there watching, as if he'd been waiting to see what I would do. The elevator descended. I never looked back. I don't stay in hotels alone anymore. Not ever. And every Christmas Eve at exactly 10:58 p.m., I turn my phone off, because some nights aren't meant to end, and some knocks are only the beginning. I was 34 when this happened, and it took place on New Year's Eve while I was traveling alone for a conference. I had done this kind of trip dozens of times before, and hotels had always felt like neutral ground to me, temporary, anonymous, safe enough. This one was a large conference hotel attached to a convention center in Arizona, the kind with long carpeted hallways and identical doors stretching farther than they should. I checked in just after 9 p.m. The lobby was busy, with people arriving for parties, dresses, and suits, laughter echoing off the high ceilings. I felt oddly comforted by the noise. The clerk handed me my key and said, 7th floor, room 724. I repeated the number back out of habit, grabbed my bag, and headed for the elevator. My room was near the end of the hall. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and froze. The room lights were already on. Not bright, but dim like someone had left them on low. The TV was off. The bed was made. Everything looked normal, except it didn't feel untouched. I stood there for a few seconds, my hand still on the door handle, listening. Nothing. I told myself housekeeping must have left the lights on. It happens. I locked the door behind me and did my usual check, bathroom closet, under the bed. Nothing seemed out of place. I set my bag down and went to change. That's when I noticed the smell, faint but unmistakable. Someone else's cologne, not the hotel soap. Not cleaning chemicals, a warm, musky scent that didn't belong to me. I opened the window slightly, hoping to air it out, then shrugged it off. Shared spaces smell strange sometimes. Around 9:40, I ordered room service and sat on the bed, scrolling through my phone. Outside, fireworks popped faintly in the distance as early celebrations started. I texted a friend back home, joking that I was ringing in the new year with bad TV and overpriced pasta. The knock at the door came 10 minutes later. I assumed it was room service and stood to open it. Through the peephole, I saw a housekeeping cart, no person, just the edge of the cart blocking part of the view. I hesitated, then called out, "Hello." No response. The cart rolled away slowly. I didn't open the door. Something about it felt off. Room service arrived for real a few minutes later. I ate, showered, and got into bed, leaving the TV on for noise. Just before midnight, as I was half asleep, I heard a soft sound from the bathroom, like the shower curtain moving. I sat up instantly, heart racing. I hadn't turned the bathroom light on. I listened. Nothing. I told myself it was air pressure or the vent. I lay back down, staring at the ceiling, at exactly 1203A. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You forgot to lock it." I sat up, adrenaline flooding my body. Lock what I typed before I could stop myself. The reply came almost immediately. The window. I turned slowly to look at the window. It was closed, locked. I checked it anyway, my hands shaking. It was secure. I typed, "Wrong number." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Then another message, "Room 724 smells different now." My stomach dropped. I hadn't told anyone my room number. I called the front desk, trying to keep my voice steady. I explained that I was receiving strange messages, and asked if anyone had access to guest phone numbers. The clerk sounded annoyed, said it was likely a prank, and suggested I block the number. I hung up, feeling stupid and exposed at the same time. I blocked the number and tried to sleep. I must have dozed off, because the next thing I remember is waking to the sound of the bathroom door opening. Slowly, the light clicked on. I bolted upright, heart pounding so hard it hurt. I stared at the bathroom doorway. No one came out. The light stayed on. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight, pointing it toward the bathroom. The shower curtain was pulled back now. I knew for a fact it had been closed earlier. I whispered hello. My voice sounded small in the quiet room. No answer. I got out of bed and checked the bathroom carefully. Empty. The window above the tub was cracked open just a few inches. I slammed it shut and locked it, my hands trembling. My phone buzzed again. A new number. "You don't like the smell." I felt dizzy. I backed away from the bathroom and sat on the edge of the bed, clutching my phone. "Who are you?" I typed. The reply came slower this time. "Someone who was here first." I didn't respond. I grabbed my bag and started throwing clothes into it. I was leaving. I didn't care what time it was. As I zipped my bag, there was a knock at the door. Not loud, not aggressive, just a gentle tap. 1, 2, 3. "Front desk," a man's voice said softly. "We need to speak with you about your room." I didn't move. I didn't breathe. My phone buzzed one last time. "Don't open it yet." I stood there shaking, realizing with terrifying clarity that whoever was texting me wasn't outside my door. They were already inside my room, and I had no idea where they were hiding. I stood perfectly still, staring at the door, while my heart hammered so hard it made my ears ring. "Front desk," the man's voice said again, calm and patient, like he had all the time in the world. My phone buzzed in my hand. Another message from the unknown number. If you open it, he'll hear us. My mouth went dry. I backed away from the door slowly, careful not to make a sound. The knocking stopped. Silence rushed in, thick and heavy. I waited, counting my breaths, listening for footsteps that didn't come. Then, from somewhere inside the room, I heard a faint sound. Fabric shifting. Very close. Behind me. I spun around, flashlight shaking in my hand, scanning the room. Nothing. The closet door was closed. The curtains were still drawn. The bed was untouched. I forced myself to breathe slowly, telling myself panic would get me hurt. I texted back with trembling thumbs. "Where are you?" The reply came almost instantly. "Close." I felt tears burn my eyes. I didn't know who I was more afraid of, the man at the door, or whoever was messaging me from inside my room. I took a step toward the window, planning to scream if I had to, when the bathroom door creaked open again. Just an inch. I froze. The light inside flickered, then steadied. A shadow moved across the tiled floor. I bolted for the door, yanking it open without thinking. The hallway was empty. The housekeeping cart was gone. No staff. No guests. Just a long stretch of carpet and closed doors. I stepped out and slammed the door behind me, locking it from the outside. My hands shook so badly, I dropped my keycard once before getting it into the slot. I leaned against the door gasping, feeling ridiculous and terrified at the same time. My phone buzzed again. "You locked me in," the message read. My legs nearly gave out. I ran down the hallway toward the elevators, hitting the call button over and over. The elevator took too long. The stairwell door was closer. I pushed through it and ran down the stairs, my footsteps echoing loudly in the concrete shaft. I didn't stop until I reached the lobby. It was still busy, music playing, people laughing, champagne glasses clinking. The normalcy almost broke me. I went straight to the front desk, my voice shaking as I explained that someone had been in my room. The clerk frowned, confused, and called security. 2 guards accompanied me back upstairs, one in front and one behind. My room door was still locked from the outside. They unlocked it and entered first. Everything looked normal. No one inside, no signs of forced entry. The bathroom window was locked. The closet was empty. The guards exchanged a look. One of them asked if I was sure I hadn't imagined it. I felt heat rise in my chest, anger, fear, humiliation, all at once. I showed them the messages, the photos, the call logs. The guard's expression shifted slightly, but he said there wasn't much they could do without evidence of a crime. He suggested moving me to another room on a different floor and offered complimentary breakfast. I declined. I wanted to leave. They insisted I couldn't check out without talking to a manager who wouldn't be in until morning. I agreed to the room change just to get away from that one. The new room was on the 2nd floor near the lobby. I sat on the bed with all the lights on, my bag-packed phone clutched tightly in my hand. Midnight came and went. The messages stopped. I didn't sleep. At 3:17 a.m., my phone buzzed again. "Unknown number. You picked the loud floor." I stared at the screen, my chest tight. "Why are you doing this?" I typed. The reply took longer this time. "Because you noticed." I blocked the number, turned my phone off completely, and sat there in the dark listening to the sounds of the hotel elevators, distant voices, doors opening and closing. When morning finally came, I checked out as fast as I could. The manager apologized profusely and promised to investigate. I didn't believe anything would come of it. I drove home in silence, replaying the night over and over, trying to make sense of it. Weeks passed. Nothing happened. I started to believe it had been a one-time thing, a coincidence layered with exhaustion and fear. I almost convinced myself, until I opened my suitcase to unpack. At the bottom beneath my clothes was a hotel keycard. Not mine, different brand, different color. Written on it in black marker were 3 numbers, 724. I threw the suitcase across the room and screamed. I changed my number that day. I stopped traveling alone whenever I could. A year later, on Christmas Eve, I received a card in the mail, no return address. Inside was a simple message written in careful handwriting. "Happy New Year. You still smell different." I burned the card and told myself it was over. But sometimes when I stay in hotels now, I catch a familiar scent in the air. And I always check the bathroom window first, because some rooms are never really empty, and some guests never actually leave. I was 32 when this happened, and it started in a hotel parking garage on Christmas Eve. I had been driving for nearly 6 hours that day, coming home from visiting my parents. The weather had turned bad faster than expected, and by the time it was dark, snow was coming down hard enough that I didn't feel safe continuing the drive. I pulled off the highway and booked the nearest hotel I could find. It wasn't cheap, but it looked clean and well lit in the photos. I told myself I'd stay one night and leave early in the morning. The hotel was attached to a multi-level parking garage, which I appreciated because it felt safer than an open lot. I parked on the third level, close to the elevator, grabbed my overnight bag, and locked the car. As I turned toward the elevator, I noticed another car pull in behind mine. The engine stayed running, headlights on. I paused, watching in the reflection of my car window. A woman stepped out of the driver's side. She looked about my age, wearing a long dark coat and carrying no bags. That struck me as odd, but I didn't think much of it. People forget things. People go back to their cars. I pressed the elevator button and waited. The woman walked toward me slowly, her footsteps echoing in the concrete garage. She stopped a few feet away, not uncomfortably close, but close enough that I noticed her eyes were fixed on me. "Long drive?" she asked casually. Her voice echoed too much in the empty space. I nodded, forcing a polite smile. The elevator dinged, and the doors opened. We stepped inside together. Neither of us pressed a button right away. Then she said, "What floor?" "4," I replied automatically. She pressed the button for 4, then pressed the button for 3 as well. The doors closed. I assumed she'd made a mistake. The elevator descended, one floor stopped at 3, and the doors opened. She didn't move. The doors closed again, and the elevator continued upward. I felt a small prickle of unease, but told myself I was reading into it. When we reached the 4th floor, the doors opened, and I stepped out. I glanced back over my shoulder. The woman stayed inside the elevator, watching me. The doors closed slowly between us. I shook it off and walked toward the lobby, checked in quickly, and took another elevator up to my room. 7th floor, room 713. The hotel was quiet, mostly business travelers already settled in for the night. I locked my door, dropped my bag, and took a shower to wash off the road. When I stepped back into the room, my phone buzzed with a notification. A message from an unknown number. "You parked on 3. I stared at the screen, my chest tightening. I hadn't given anyone my number. I typed back, "Who is this?" The reply came slowly. I took the stairs. My heart began to pound. I checked the door. Locked. Chain in place. I tried to tell myself it was a coincidence. A prank. Someone guessing. Then another message came in. "You left your headlights on for a minute." I sat on the bed, my hands trembling. That was true. I had. Only someone standing near my car would know that. I called the front desk and asked if anyone had reported an issue in the garage. The clerk said no. I asked if there were cameras. He said yes, but only security could access them. He suggested I lock my door and let them know if anything else happened. I didn't feel reassured. Around 1045, I heard voices in the hallway. I muted the TV and listened. Footsteps passed my door, then stopped. I held my breath. A shadow slid under the door. 2 shadows. Someone stood there for a long moment. Then the footsteps continued down the hall. My phone buzzed again. "I don't like elevators," the message read. "Too many cameras." I felt sick. I typed, "Why are you doing this?" The reply took longer this time. "You noticed me." I sat there, shaking, realizing the woman in the garage hadn't just been passing through. She had chosen me. Chosen my car. Chosen that moment. At midnight, there was a knock on my door. One knock. Soft. Controlled. I didn't answer. Another knock followed. Then a woman's voice spoke from the other side. Calm. Familiar. Housekeeping. I didn't move. My phone buzzed again. "Don't open it. That's not her." My breath caught in my throat. "Then who is it?" I typed. The response came immediately. "Someone who followed you too." I stared at the door, my heart racing, realizing with horrifying clarity that there was more than one person involved. And I was alone in a hotel on Christmas Eve, with no idea who was standing on the other side of that door, or who was already closer than I thought. I stared at the door, my heart pounding so loudly, I was sure whoever stood outside could hear it. The woman's voice, calm, professional, waited on the other side. "Housekeeping," she said again, softer this time, as if she didn't want to wake anyone else on the floor. My phone buzzed in my hand. "She's lying," the message read. "She followed you from the garage." I typed back with shaking thumbs. "Then who are you?" The reply came after a pause that felt deliberate. I noticed her first. The handle on my door turned slightly, testing the latch. The chain rattled once and went still. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The hallway light cast a thin line under the door, and in it I saw a shadow shift, as if someone leaned closer to listen. "Ma'am," the voice said gently, "we need to service your room." The words were wrong, too specific. My phone buzzed again. "If you open it, she'll know you're alone." The knocking stopped. Footsteps retreated down the hall. I waited, counting seconds, then minutes. My legs were trembling so badly I had to sit on the edge of the bed. The phone buzzed again. "She's waiting by the stairwell," the message said. "She doesn't like elevators." I thought of the woman in the garage, the way she'd watched me, the way she hadn't pressed a button. I called the front desk whispering, explaining that someone was harassing me and that I felt unsafe. The clerk said security would be sent up. I felt a rush of relief so strong it made me dizzy. My phone buzzed immediately. They won't get here before she does. I ignored it. I needed help. Minutes passed. No knock, no radio chatter. Just the low hum of the heater and distant elevator dings. I checked the hallway camera feed through the hotel app. It loaded, slowly pixelated. The hall outside my door was empty. The stairwell door at the end of the hall was closed. My phone buzzed. She moved. Then, behind you, I spun around hard in my throat, scanning the room. Nothing. Closet closed, bathroom door shut, window locked. I felt stupid for believing the messages, for letting fear hijack my thoughts. That's when the bathroom light clicked on. I screamed. The door swung inward an inch, then stopped. A shadow moved across the tile floor. I grabbed the lamp from the nightstand, my hands slick with sweat. I called security. I shouted, my voice cracking. Silence. The light stayed on. My phone buzzed again. "She's not in your room." I backed away, my shoulders hitting the wall. "Then who turned on the light?" I typed. The reply came slower this time. "I did, to see if you'd notice." My stomach dropped. I hurled the lamp at the bathroom door and bolted for the hallway. I yanked the door open and ran barefoot down the carpeted corridor toward the elevators. Halfway there, the stairwell door burst open. The woman from the garage stepped out, her dark coat swinging as she moved. She wasn't running, she was smiling. I veered toward the elevators, slamming the call button. The doors began to close, and then stopped. A hand slid between them. The doors reopened. A man stood there, breathless, eyes darting past me toward the woman. My phone buzzed in my pocket. He's with her. I didn't think. I ran into the stairwell instead, taking the steps 2 at a time, my lungs burning. I could hear footsteps behind me, more than one set, echoing on the concrete. I burst into the lobby, skidding across the polished floor, shouting for help. Heads turned. Conversations stopped. Security guards moved toward me. I spun around. The stairwell door swung shut behind me. No one followed. The woman was gone. The man was gone. Security listened as I tried to explain my words, tumbling over each other. They searched the stairwells, the hallways, the garage. They found nothing. No suspicious guests. No reports. One guard suggested I'd encountered aggressive panhandlers or pranksters. I laughed, then cried, the sound hysterical. I checked out immediately. In the parking garage, my car was untouched. As I drove away, my phone buzzed one last time from the unknown number. "She almost had you." I blocked it, turned my phone off, and drove until the city lights blurred. Weeks passed. I tried to forget. I avoided hotels when I could, chose daytime drives, stayed on the phone with friends at night. It almost worked. Then, months later, I received an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single parking ticket from the hotel garage dated Christmas Eve. On the back, written in neat handwriting, were 4 words that made my hands shake. I took the stairs. I threw it away and told myself it meant nothing. But sometimes when I park in garages now, I wait by the elevator longer than I should. And when a woman stands beside me and asks what floor, I don't answer. I take the stairs.